The Long Road by Wolfland. It felt like an eternity since he had unhitched himself from the makeshift harness, but the way his breath only came in short, panting gasps told him the injuries from his fall would not be easily ignored. It hadn't taken Auron long to join him at the upper level of the cave, easily skirting through the narrow tunnels that its species was known for digging, and the little Pokemon was even thoughtful enough to bring Steven's pack along too. Steven reached for his pack and rummaged through to find his canteen, wincing as the motion jostled his injured shoulder. Curious, Auron trotted up to Steven's side and peered up to watch as he fumbled with unscrewing the cap. Noticing the Pokemon's gaze, he frowned as he managed to get the cap off but dropped it to the ground. "You try doing this with one good arm," he quipped dryly, but smiled as Auron retrieved the cap in its jaws and waited for Steven to take several gulps before dropping it into his palm. "Thanks, Auron." Taking a moment to simply breathe and try to relax his weary body, Steven didn't notice as the nosy Auron began its own rummaging through his pack. When its steel snout made contact with something solid, the sound alerted Steven to what it was doing, but he was too slow, and suddenly Auron disappeared in a flash of red light. Oh no! Reaching into his pack, Steven withdrew a single Pokeball, blinking red and quaking ever so slightly in his palm. Somehow, Auron had managed to bump the toggle on an empty Pokeball and got itself captured inside. Steven sighed and set the Pokeball on the ground. It was an accidental capture, and Auron would break free with little trouble. But as he watched the Pokeball shake back and forth, the red indicator eventually blinked out, and Auron never re-emerged. Hesitantly, Steven reached for the ball and toggled the release. Flashing bright, Auron reappeared and barked as it stared back at its new trainer. Rubbing the bridge of his nose, Steven couldn't deny how pleased the little Auron looked, so he sighed again. "Well, welcome to the team, I guess." Thankfully, Steven had to admit that walking was easily the least stressful activity when it came to navigating his way out of Granite Cave. Auron had taken it upon itself to carry Steven's pack on its back, and despite how tired he felt, he couldn't tell but crack a smile at the comically overburdened Pokemon bobbing along on four stubby legs in front of him. They had arrived back at the main chamber some time ago, but Steven knew he still had to find his partner before they could exit the cave. Night had long since fallen, and the cavern took on a soft, moonlit glow that, while beautiful, made searching the darkness for Beldum a bit tricky. Confident that the newest addition of his team could protect him from any wild Pokemon he might disturb, Steven abandoned caution and cupped a hand to his mouth. "Beldum! Where are you?" His voice echoed off the glistening walls, and he strained to hear his partner's distinctive call in return. When he heard nothing but silence, Steven tried again. He had a feeling Beldum would be frantically searching for him as well, and it was only a matter of time before it heard his calls. This time, the sound of faint chattering made it to his ears, and Steven smiled. He quickly caught sight of a blue blur rapidly making its way towards him, the chattering increasing in pitch as it drew near. But his smile faltered as a protective bark sounded at his feet. "Auron, wait!" he called out, as Auron shed its load and took a flying leap at the incoming Beldum. "It's okay! This is my partner! It's a friend!" Auron stopped its charge and eyed Beldum warily, while the Pokemon in question slowed to a halt and chattered at him angrily. Steven sighed and beckoned Beldum close with a hand before greeting it with a one-armed hug. "You have no idea how glad I am to see you," he smiled as he looked down to where his other Pokemon sat. "Auron, meet your teammate. Beldum, this is Auron, the newest addition to our team." At Steven's gentle introduction, Aron seemed to calm down, although it didn't stop Beldam from shooting it a nasty glare, still tucked under Steven's arm. Steven didn't miss his starter's attitude, and he quickly admonished its behavior. "Be nice! Aron's probably never seen one of your kind before. Besides, I doubt I'd even be standing here right now if it wasn't for his help." With its trainer's admission, Beldam's gaze softened, and it chirped a quiet apology at Aron, who rumbled his own apology in return. But Beldam's calm demeanor was short-lived as it finally took in Steven's haggard appearance. Wiggling its way out of Steven's grasp, it flitted nervously about, and Steven weakly waved a hand to try to calm it down. "It's not as bad as it looks." He tried to sound as confident as he could. "But I don't think we'll be going back to challenge the gym anytime soon." Beldam whined a low note that told Steven he wasn't as convincing as he could have been about his condition. Meanwhile, Aron sat silently by, cocking its head to the side in thought. In an effort to appease his starter, Steven shuffled towards the exit and beckoned for his team to follow. "I've had enough of this cave. Let's head back to town." The sun was just beginning to slip above the eastern shore as Steven limped into Dewford Town with Aron and Beldam in tow. The town seemed to look even sleepier in the morning light. With little else to do but cater to tourism, none of the locals seemed to be up and about in the center of town at such an early hour. To Steven, it was both a blessing and a curse that they'd arrived so early in the morning. He was sure their little group was a sorry sight to behold as they trudged into town, haggard and worn. But on the other hand, he would have been quite grateful if there were any townsfolk around to point him in the direction of the nearest hospital. But it appeared as if Aron had other ideas, as it happily trotted along until it came to a halt in front of the gym doors with a short bark. Steven glanced down at his newest Pokemon with a weary expression. "Aron, what are you doing?" However, the little steel type proceeded to ignore his trainer. Removing the pack from his back, he placed it gently to the side and moved back in front of the doors before settling patiently on his haunches, waiting for the gym to open for the day. Beldam hovered nervously at Steven's side, its eye darting between its two companions. Relinquishing the white-knuckled grip on his injured arm, Steven reached up to pinch the bridge of his nose in exasperation. His head hadn't stopped pounding since emerging from Granite Cave, and he wasn't sure how much longer he would be able to stay upright in this condition. "Aron, we can't challenge the gym right now. You're weak to fighting type moves, and Beldam doesn't know any psychic attacks yet. We need to train more before we come back." But Aron had already made up its mind, and no amount of coaxing from Steven or Beldam would get him to budge. So, with a tired sigh, Steven waited with his Pokemon outside the Dewford gym until the doors slid open promptly at 7 a.m.